The news hit hard. General Motors, an American icon, shutting down all U.S. production. The statement was cold and final. Plants idled, workers sent home indefinitely. Detroit, once alive with assembly lines, now eerily silent. It felt like a betrayal, a deep cut into the American psyche. The shockwaves were immediate, rippling across the nation and the globe. GM, the giant, brought to its knees. Was this a calculated move? The press scrambled. Experts were stunned. How could this happen? The company that once claimed, "What's good for GM is good for America," now seemed to abandon America. This wasn't just a business decision. It was a blow to American identity and pride. The silence from the White House was telling. A storm was brewing, and everyone knew it. Why would GM, a titan of industry, take such a drastic step? The official statement was vague, filled with corporate jargon. But insiders whispered of a desperate gamble, a high-stakes play in a changing world. The shift to electric vehicles was costlier and more difficult than anticipated. Legacy costs, union contracts, outdated infrastructure weighed down U.S. operations. International competitors were leaner, faster, more adaptable. GM saw U.S. manufacturing as a losing game, a slow bleed they couldn't endure. The decision was made in secret, over months of tense meetings. Hardliners won, believing in a swift, decisive cut for long-term survival. The American worker and taxpayer were secondary considerations. This was about shareholder value. GM's silence was strategic, letting the storm rage. The era of American exceptionalism in auto manufacturing for GM was over. The news reached Mar-a-Lago swiftly. Donald Trump, former president, was incandescent with rage. GM, the company he believed he saved, now betrayed him. It was a personal affront to his America First mantra. His reaction was volcanic and public. His Truth Social account lit up with invective. "GM stabs America in the back," he declared. He called for boycotts, tariffs, and government action. His base roared approval, feeding off his every word. Trump's fury was not just political theater, it was deeply personal. GM's decision felt like a repudiation of his legacy. He clashed with GM CEO Mary Barra, naming names and making threats. This was war. A press conference was quickly organized. Trump painted GM's decision as a sinister plot to undermine America. He vowed to fight, to reverse this, to make GM pay. His supporters cheered, the media lapped it up. It was classic Trump, turning a corporate crisis into a political rallying cry. The financial markets reacted violently. GM's stock plummeted, and the contagion spread. This wasn't just about one company. It was a vote of no confidence in American manufacturing. The Dow Jones shuddered. Analysts revised forecasts downward. The specter of recession loomed larger. Economists warned of a domino effect. GM's closure meant tens of thousands of direct job losses, with indirect losses potentially 10 times that number. Entire towns and cities could be hollowed out. The Federal Reserve faced a new nightmare, a supply and demand shock. Could they cut interest rates? What about inflation? The administration issued statements of concern, pledging support for affected workers. But the market wanted decisive action. Internationally, America's rivals watched with interest. A weakened American manufacturing base shifted the global balance of power. GM's decision was a global story with far-reaching consequences. Beyond the stock tickers and political posturing, there were the people, GM workers, their families, their communities. For them, this wasn't an economic data point. It was their lives, their livelihoods, their futures suddenly upended. The news hit like a physical blow. Disbelief, anger, then dread. What now? How to pay the mortgage, feed the children, find another job? Union halls became places of mourning and fury. Union leaders condemned GM, vowing to fight. But a full U.S. shutdown left little room for negotiation. Generations had worked for GM. It was more than a job. It was an identity, a source of pride. "We built the best cars in the world," one worker said. "And this is how they repay us?" The sense of injustice was profound. The impact on communities was immediate. Local businesses braced for the worst. The human cost of GM's decision was incalculable, measured in broken dreams and shattered hopes. Washington, D.C. was in an uproar. The GM announcement detonated like a bomb in Congress and the White House. Democrats blamed corporate greed. Republicans blamed current policies. The blame game was loud and divisive. Congressional hearings were announced, CEOs summoned. There was talk of emergency aid, retraining programs, incentives for other industries. But these were long-term solutions for an immediate problem. The political posturing offered little hope to those affected. The president addressed the nation, expressing disappointment and pledging support. But his words felt inadequate against the scale of the shutdown. The administration seemed caught off guard. The crisis transcended partisan bickering, striking at America's economic identity. Could the government compel a private company to stay? The debate was fierce, exposing deep divisions about the role of government and the future of American enterprise. The dust from GM's bombshell had yet to settle, but one thing was clear. The American automotive industry stood at a crossroads. GM's exit was a symptom of larger shifts in technology, global economics, and consumer preferences. The certainties of the 20th century were gone, replaced by a volatile future. Could the U.S. remain a major player in automotive manufacturing? Other automakers watched nervously. Would they follow GM's lead or see an opportunity? The answer would shape the economic landscape for decades. The transition to electric vehicles and autonomous driving were revolutions requiring massive investment. Could America compete? The GM crisis was a wake-up call. Innovation, investment, and a national strategy were essential for survival. The future of American autos depended on choices made in boardrooms, Washington, research labs, and by consumers. Would the nation rise to the challenge? The road ahead was fraught with peril, but also with promise. The next chapter in America's automotive story was yet to be written.